You guys all ready? It shows 7 o'clock, so we will call the meeting to order, the meeting of the Garfield Township Planning Commission. The first item is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't see Ann tonight, so John, you want to take a roll?
Augustinelli,
Here.
Klein,
Here.
Robertson,
Here.
DeGood,
Here.
Fudge.
Here.
Racine is absent and excused. McManus.
Here. Okay. First item on the agenda tonight is public comment. We actually have two areas of public comment, one at the beginning of the meeting, one at the end. And then we actually have a public hearing tonight on the North Garfield special use permit. So we'll open up public comment, and you're free to come up and discuss anything you'd like or let us know anything you want to let us know. But if you are specifically here for the Garfield special use permit, you might be better hold your comments till then if you choose to, but it's your choice. So at this point, we'll open up public comment. And as is most time the case, nobody's running up to the microphones. We'll close public comment and move on to review and approval of the agenda. Anybody if has any conflicts of interest, now would be the time to let us know about those.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda.
Support. Motion made and supported to approve the agenda as presented. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, next item is our minutes from the February 28th Planning Commission meeting. Anybody have any corrections, comments, or questions about those minutes?
Make a motion the minutes be approved as presented.
Support.
Motion made and supported to adopt the minutes as presented. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is correspondence. John, I just see the one. Is there any other correspondence?
Yeah, there's just the one letter from Haggard's. I do have another item for the public hearing. It was actually a phone call that I received from a business owner near there, but I can address that when we get to that item for 3066 North Garfield.
Okay. All right. All right, reports. Molly, any town board reports?
No, we are still pursuing the manager position, and I think we'll have some resolutions to that effect at the next meeting.
Okay. All right. Chris, anything from, or I'm sorry, Bob, anything from Zoning Board of Appeals?
We had no meeting, thank you.
No meeting?
We have not.
Chris, no
we
Parks
have
and Rec?
Not met either.
And we haven't had our quarterly meeting yet for joint planning, or it's coming up. We already had one, but we've already addressed that. So we'll move on to staff reports.
You have our monthly report in the packet that was presented to the town board last night at their meeting. I did want to add a couple things that are not on there. They're just some of the added functions that we're doing in the planning department. And that's a couple of groups that I'm on representing the township. One is the PTCI Technical Committee. So as you may be aware of, the Traverse area became an urbanized area in accordance with the census and is now has a metropolitan planning organization formed for all of the approvals for transportation projects in the Traverse urban area. That also is required for that. It goes 20 years out. That will be done, be worked on later this year as they're going to start that process. There's a short-term, they call it a TIP, or Transportation Improvement Program, that is going to look at projects 5-6 years out, and then they do an annual work plan, and that is the projects in kind of the current budget year, actually 1 to 2 years. So all those things are being put in place rather quickly here in order to meet the requirements for the MPO. So I'm on the technical committee. The technical committee is people, planners like myself, engineers, and other transportation people that make recommendations to the policy board. Policy board is usually the elected leaders from the urban area that make the final decisions on some of these things. So I just wanted to let you know that's something that I'm attending on an every other month basis. Also, I'm representing the township on the Airport Authority Zoning Board. So that's a zoning board strictly for the Airport Authority property, the Cherry Capital Airport. The zoning board actually has mostly members of the Airport Authority itself, but then there's the representatives, the planning directors from the city, from East Bay Township, and from Garfield Township. And that is strictly, though, for that property that the airport owns. What they are looking at, and it looks like it is going to probably move forward, is developing a airspace zoning ordinance. So this is different than our ordinance. But this is one that deals with any structures or anything that go vertical into the air and those relationship to planes that are coming into the area, taking off, and so forth. And they're going to be looking to, both county boards and the airport authority are going to look at the possibilities of developing such airspace ordinance, which would address land within a 10-mile radius of the airport. So this is something, right now, we are already running into this because there's already requirements related to things, everything from cranes going up to buildings and so forth, depending on where they're located. Right now, if you don't meet those, if you, I should say, if you hit those, if you get to a certain level in height and so forth, and it doesn't meet the requirements of the state, which now governs that airspace, there's no recourse to that. By going through this airspace zoning ordinance, which would be a local ordinance for the Cherry Capital Airport, it allows us to have an appeals process so we can manage situations. There is no appeal process when you're dealing with the Aeronautics Commission at the state of Michigan. So there's advantages to having some more local control, particularly in light of the airport, which is growing and is going to continue to grow. Their numbers are really getting high. They have 5 carriers now at the airport, and they're looking, looks like there's going to be a 6th carrier. They have 19 nonstop flights. Some of those are seasonal, but that looks like that's going to be bumped up. There's another one they're going to be announcing soon. The number of passengers last year was over 700,000. So it's the 3rd busiest airport in Michigan. Detroit first, Gerald Ford and Grand Rapids, and then Cherry Capital. Because of that, the current terminal, and I know I'm kind of getting a little offside, but this is kind of some interesting information. But the terminal right now that they have is really has a capacity for about 350,000 passengers. So there is plans to expand the terminal to add additional gates. Right now, I think they're at 5. There's plans to add 5 more over the next few years, and then another 5 to meet the demand. So the airport has a strong presence in this community base in its location. So as you hear more planes and flying in and out of this area, it's going to be, I think, while it's exciting to see the growth of the airport, it's also going to be some of our challenges in terms of how we manage land use in relationship to the growth and activity of the airport. So we'll see how that goes, but I just want to kind of give you an update on those things. If anybody have any questions?
Now, who would draft that ordinance?
It's kind of a unique process. So it'd be initiated by both county boards of commissioners, Grand Traverse County and Leelanau County. And they would indicate to the State Aeronautics Commission that they want to pursue this. And then there would be some oversight by the Aeronautics Commission, but there would be an airport zoning board, not the one I'm on, but a separate one set up that would govern the ordinance, but there would be a zoning commission temporarily established to devise the ordinance. Once the ordinance is established, then that zoning commission goes away. And then there's essentially a zoning board of appeals that is also set up. So at the end of the day, to allow for appeals. So at the end of the day, you have a airspace ordinance, you have an airport zoning board and then a airport zoning board of appeals.
And because that's Grand Traverse Linaw County, would that be an ordinance that would just get adopted at the county level, or would the townships have to get involved in adopting it?
There
also?
is requirements for membership of those boards, not necessarily the zoning commission, but the zoning board of appeals and the airport zoning board have to have residents from inside the hazard area from both counties as well as outside. They indicated that it would be township residents, and I don't know if that's how the statute is written, but it's the MDOT person, or this would be the State of Michigan aeronautics person said it would had to be township people, but that doesn't mean it would necessarily involve, that's just representation on those boards. In terms of approval of it, I'm not sure, but it sounds like it's something that's handled at the county level and working with the State Aeronautics Commission. So it's important, I think, for us to be apprised of what's going on as this process goes forward, because it has a potential to impact, development, particularly where some uses residential go and so forth. And just to understand, the impact right now is happening when Meadow Valley, which you think is pretty far from the airport, but because of they were still in close proximity to the airport, when they put up one of their cranes, they got dinged by the FAA. They did not get that permit for that, as well as the building itself, because it meets a certain elevation threshold, so it kind of bumps up into that airspace. So those issues have been resolved related to that development. I just want to use that as an illustration that that's how far-reaching this airspace currently is under those type of restrictive requirements. So.
I had experience with the aeronautical, can't remember the correct terminology for it, but it's all the planes landing, but there's also spatial planes.
Yes.
And those spatial planes are the reason why, if you remember, 7-8 years ago, they cleared a bunch of trees in the vicinity of the ends of the runway. Mm-hmm. And as you said, miles away, seemingly, and if the ground rises relative to where the airport is, as it does along the west side of our township, you get those impacts where you're kind of doing a double take. And so having the local authority to govern that and an appeals process is a big deal. So I'm glad to hear that.
So how'd they solve that with that building being too high out there?
Well, they just had to get it registered through the FAA. Mm-hmm. So that's why we suggest to people, if you're right now, it's actually in our ordinance, is the approach areas. But there's kind of fanned out, those areas are as you get closer to the airport. So that's one thing, but then there's it's right now the I don't know if it's called the hazard area. The 10-mile one is a hazard area that is planning to be developed, but the one currently is about 6-mile radius around the airport. And some of that, it's a matter of the review. Some of it can be just registration, so that they're aware of the whatever height of that object is, and doesn't necessarily stop that development. But there's at least, you need to at least check with them and review before you start. Any construction is really important. But I think it's important for us to be thinking how this is going to impact us in terms of what land uses go where, particularly in relationship to the runway areas.
Comments or questions on that? Yep. On your report?
Just a couple other things. We always do the master plan announcement for benefit of members of the public or anyone watching, and I won't take too much time because I know we're talking about it later. But it's available on the website, the draft, and we are looking at some suggested edits later in this meeting. So if we get an edited draft, there will be an edited draft on the website shortly, and it'll be the focal point of discussion at the joint meeting in a couple weeks. So continue to look out for master plan updates and how to provide feedback. And thank you everyone who's provided feedback so far in this process. Then the only other thing, I'll just be real brief, is some information being forwarded from across the hall, the zoning and building. A couple of things that we have reviewed, they've at least started permitting process. I don't know exactly how far they are, but at least have made some applications. Marengo 31 behind Baymont, and the K1 in the old Sears. So those, we've at least gotten some applications on the other side. So those look like they're moving forward, and hopefully we'll be starting work here soon. That's all we have.
All right, thanks, Guy. All right, moving on. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business. Item A is Planning Department Report 2024-18, 3066 North Garfield Special Use Permit Public Hearing. You going to kick that one off?
Yes, so this is a little over an acre parcel located at the corner of Dual Road and Garfield Road. It's 3066 North Garfield, just north of the auto car wash there on Garfield. The request is for commercial district housing development. So in the commercial general district, which this is zoned, commercial district housing developments are permitted via a special use permit. So the applicant is proposing a 20-unit apartment building. Included with the building is an attached gym, provided amenity to the proposed apartment building. So as you recall, this was introduced back on October 11th, 2023 to the Planning Commission. The application was paused while there was some changes to the commercial district housing development language. Those have been resolved and addressed, and the project is now moving forward, and this is for a public hearing for consideration of that application.
All right. I guess at this time, we'll go ahead and open up the, I don't know if there's really a need for the developer to come up at this point, but we'll open up the public hearing, and then if there's any questions, the developer could answer those at that time. So at this point, we will open up the public hearing for item A under unfinished business, the 3066 North Garfield Special Use Permit. We just ask you come up and state your name and address for the record in the microphone, and anybody feel free to come on up and comment. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, Dual Road.
Yep. Now it's done. Yep.
3066 North Garfield is the address, official address, but it's a Dual Road development, yes.
Yep.
My name is James Howard, and me and my wife own the building next door to 931 Dual Road, which is the building is adjourning the project you currently are talking about. My only concern is I'm happy that it's going on. It's just what's the plan on dealing with the amount of water that's going to be dealt with over there? Because I know everybody over there has like retaining areas in that area over there. So I know the car wash had to build up so high to contain their water in the back. And we also have a retaining area. So I'm just curious on how they're going to retain their water.
Okay.
Because they're above us.
All right.
So that's my only question.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I did
Want to
have-
answer that, or do you, go ahead.
Well, on the, there, on the site plan, there is a stormwater plan,
Okay.
stormwater management plan, and that's, requires review by the township engineer. So, I did also want to mention the Dual Road, there's a property owner, Mr. Corson, which is 891 Dual Road. He was, so it's farther down, he was concerned about the, he's okay and supportive of the project and the development. He was just concerned about the traffic in terms of getting into and out of Dual Road. And certainly, we know that Garfield is a major north-south road, particularly going traffic from all the way down Kingsley all the way north. And so certainly, at certain time periods, it's got to be very difficult to get in and out of there. So he was just concerned about that. But again, he wasn't necessarily, like, he didn't have any concern about the development, it was just more about the traffic and how that's managed.
Okay. Well, public comment is still open if anybody has any more comment. Not, I'll close that. I guess at this point, does the board have any questions about the development or for the developer at this point? Okay. So the water concerns that Mr. Howard brought up is addressed on the site.
They will, just as all projects that come through the Planning Commission, the township engineer will have to be, conduct a review of stormwater as well as the sewer and water utility improvements. I did have talk with the applicant. There are kind of three main areas that we had talked about that need to be addressed. One of them, we did talk about the stormwater drainage basins that are proposed on the site in terms of their location and also some of the landscape plantings on that, ensure that they're not impeding the stormwater retention areas. When I talk with the township engineer, they try to keep those out of the basin themselves, at the edges, but not in the middle of the basin. Also, there was one of the requirements of the commercial district housing is the section 725A3, which talks about how to mitigate some of the sound and other impact from the commercial businesses onto the where the proposed housing is going to be located. And then the third one is very minor. It was just about needing to recalculate the snow storage area. But I've addressed these with the applicant, and they're prepared to address those this evening to the Planning Commission. Those were really the only items that we had. I think one of the important things to, and I provided the information in the report, is related to the density. So as a commercial district housing development, it's the baseline density that's prescribed to that is our R3 district, which is 4,000 square feet per dwelling unit. So it's basically just shy of 11 units an acre is what our R3 density is. They're proposing something at about 16 and a half units, but I've provided on my report other developments that have exceeded that 11 unit per acre. So Village of Lafreniere Woods was at about 11.6. Village at Bay Ridge over on Silver Lake Road is 15 units per acre. Premier PUD, particularly the Premier Manor portion there, is about 16 units an acre. Not sure why Village at Bay Ridge is repeated there. It looks like there was two different calculations. So I'm not sure what that is. It's error on my part there.
Do they have two phases?
I don't think so, based on the number of units.
All right.
Fox Run PURD, which is just down the road on Garfield, is at about a little over 20 units per acre. And then at the crossings, GT Crossings PUD, there's a parcel there which has 23 units an acre. So just trying to give some other examples of where there's been flexibility. The commercial district housing section does allow the Planning Commission to authorize increases in density over what is regularly allowable, so there is that flexibility. There are also the design requirements that we've addressed in there in terms of some of the standards that you can look at related to the plan unit residential development. Other than that, I think it's just really kind of those issues, considerations.
Did you want to, did the developer want to speak to this thing? Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Joe Lacricchio of 3066 North Garfield LLC. My partners Sean McCardle and Riley Bull are here as well, and Eric Wild from Mansfield, our project engineer and land planner, is here as well. The staff report covers everything in great, detail. A couple of things I wanted to address. Mr. Syke, the density, is it not 13 that would be approved in the underlying with 1.21 net acres and 4,000 minimum? I think it's 13. So I think the increase we're looking for is 13 to 20. But as you saw from those several examples, and my math might be off, John, so I think we're 1.21 net
Right.
at 43,560. So it's, I think our under R3 it'd be 13.
But again, you've approved projects, similar projects for the density increase, and we understand, but we feel like this project meets the intent and the spirit of Section 725, and hope that you feel the same way about that in terms of granting this density bonus. These are all 2-bedroom, 2-bath units, generous living space, and great urban environment that'll provide, housing for a good number of people where they can bike, they can walk, they can access, whatever by car as well, but it's urban center living. And we think that's what speaks volumes about the project. With respect to the conditions that Mr. Syke laid out in the staff report, our engineer has already addressed 2 out of those 3 items. And the third, we're prepared to talk to you about it tonight, which is about the noise mitigation. In particular, the staff report identified the car wash on the south side of our property and what we plan to do to alleviate that impact. Their hours are limited, but, car wash is about noise generation. So we're taking standards and steps in our construction process to address that. So if I may, we'll address any questions you have, of course, but if I may, I'm going to let Sean McCardle tell you about what we're going to do when we construct this building to address that noise. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sean McCardle, and my address is 310 Waterwatch Lane in Traverse City. I'm a second-generation realtor, developer, and construction manager. I had the good fortune of attending the nation's leading construction management program at MSU, where we took deep dives into structural design and building science. Additionally, I had the enormous fortune of being mentored in the areas of building and property management by my father. He taught me the benefits of referring to our lessees as residents and not tenants, a practice I still continue today. He would tell me the simple fact that the residents will reside and tenants are more likely to be transient, and we should address them accordingly. At the Garfield, we want our lessees to reside. We do not want them to move. We want to create a small private community where our residents will stay for years and not move out, where neighbors get to know one another. We feel one of the first things to do to make this happen is to build a better building, to build an elite building with a critical eye towards building science and reduced sound transmission. Over the last several months, I've had conversations with both John and Steve about our building assembly practices, elite window installation practices, how we plan to control vapor and provide clean, fresh indoor air, and yes, how to control sound transmission, both from outside and interior influences. For tonight's discussion, I'd like to focus on the south and west walls of the building, both floors. The use of Elite FX soundboard raises the STC rating by 34% over traditional 5/8 drywall and closer to 50% over half-inch board. Combine the Elite FX soundboard, which is right here.
Let me turn sideways.
Yeah. So we have the 2x6 frame wall here, this is the outside. On the inside, we have this Elite
Sean,
FX soundboard.
Sean, you're gonna
Yeah,
have to,
need
you're
to-
being on TV, so you gotta.
We need to be
Gotta be
catching
at
the
the mic.
microphone.
You can move the mic if you want.
Sure. So the first layer of board here has 2 layers of drywall with a vinyl membrane in between, which is a sound transmission control product. On top of that, we will use an RC, like a half-inch RC channel, which will hold the 3rd layer of drywall off of the soundboard. So these practices, the Elite FX soundboard is usually reserved in hotels for tenant separation or party walls. The RC channel holding that off the 5/8 drywall allows that sound to not transfer from the outside to in. Inside, we will use a a blown-in bib, fiberglass blown-in insulation. That's significant because the blown-in, sprayed-in insulation will get, it's a full cavity spray, so there's all the nooks and crannies, there's no voids coming from outside to inside. So that practice of using the bib system will increase our sound transmission control rating by 15 points. The RC channel increases our sound transmission control rating by 15 points. The Elite FX soundboard increases the sound transmission control rating by anywhere from 34 to 50%, depending upon if you're using a half-inch board or 5/8 inch board. When we install our windows, this is an important part that I've talked to John and Steve about, and I would invite you all to come out when we do this to see that we actually do this. But it's a very, very unique process that we do. We will take the weatherproof membrane here, which is the house wrap, the weather-resistant barrier. We will peel that back from the framing around the window. The window will get caulked and nailed to the OSB, directly to the OSB. Then we tape the two sides of that window that's been glued and nailed to the OSB on the sides. Then we'll put tape over the top of that. So the two sides first, tape over the top. Then we'll take the weather-resistant barrier, we'll fold that back over that flange, the two sides first, then the top over that. It's the same concept. You would never want to tuck your pants into your rain boots. You want to have your pants on the outside of your rain boots. So that practice alone, which is a simple deal, non-economic, just people refuse to do it, will make that wall assembly a tighter wall assembly. It'll help to control vapor, it'll help to improve the indoor air quality of the units for the residents, and it will help to control noise. In addition to this, when we insulate the building and we spray in that blown-in bib insulation versus using a rolled blanket insulation, which is a premium product, the insulators will go through and they caulk with exterior rated caulk the bottom plate, any joints that we have in the studs, so any studs that are nailed together, all that will get caulked. But then we have our contract labor, our field labor, go back through with dozens of cans of Flex Seal spray. It's the Flex Seal spray you see on TV where the guy's paddling a boat that's been cut open over a bunch of sharks. So I figure if it's good enough for him, it'd be good enough for our building. So we go through and we'll spray the bottom plate, the sill plate, after they caulk that. So all of these things are just little details to help us build a better, more elite building that will help to improve the indoor air quality, and in this case, help to mitigate that noise transmission from the outside, from the car wash, back inside to that unit. We don't want residents that live in there and hearing unnecessary outdoor noise, either from the car wash or from Garfield Road, or hearing residents within their own building. We want to do whatever we can to minimize that noise transference. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present to you our vision for the next generation of urban infill housing, and I'm excited to have and answer any questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions?
What U number is your windows gonna be?
I'm sorry?
What's that number on your window gonna be, that U number?
It'd be a .27, which is a thermal rating. That doesn't have anything to do with the sound transmission, but it's a .27 for the...
That's just standard then? You're not using any special window then?
No, it's a low E argon gas-filled window, yes.
Right,
But we didn't, yeah,
every
there's
day,
nothing,
but-
there's no sound, we don't have any sound deadening glass, no.
Can you get any? Is there any available?
We can look into it.
That- You can do all you want with that wall, but you put that regular standard window in there, and what's the difference?
Sure. Well, yeah, I would say to you that there'd be a big difference between this wall assembly and most standard wall assemblies you see in a multi-family arrangement, but we can look into the glass for sure.
Questions?
John, what are the obligations under section 725.A3?
In terms of what's that requirement?
Right.
So applications shall describe measures which will be taken to mitigate common commercial impacts such as noise, light, and nighttime operations on the multifamily project. So it's kind of reverse of what we typically do. We always think of when we're looking at projects, what's the impact on the adjacent one? This is the flip side. By allowing multifamily residential in the commercial district, it's in essence trying to protect this project, trying to build in some mitigation measures. Beyond that, it doesn't really state, specifically what those measures will be. Well, I guess what I was trying to look from the applicant was to have some evidence of what, materials or other ways to, landscaping or other ways to kind of mitigate those potential sound impacts.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you. I think that doesn't sound like anybody has any other questions at this point, so, thank you. Did you have anybody else you wanted to speak, right?
Did you want to speak on any of those other items that, or did?
On the conditions, you mean 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah,
Yeah, Eric, you want to talk about those?
yeah. Yep.
How you doing? I'm Eric Wild. I'm with Mansfield, the design engineer for this project. I was just going to address your comment regarding the landscaping, and I'll address your comment as well about the stormwater. So right now, we did put together a stormwater plan, which was designed in accordance to the Township's stormwater ordinance. It's designed to store a back-to-back 100-year storm, which is over 10 inches over 48 hours is how much we've designed to store on our site. As far as the landscaping, we've got some room to maneuver the basin just to change some of those contours so that the trees are not within that. We've got about 1 foot of water level in our basins around the perimeter. So we've got some room to move those trees out of there. We've also shown our lowest area of our basin is actually on the west side, closer to Garfield Road. There's a shallow basin between your property and this property, but majority of the water is going to be on the west side of the site. As far as snow storage, we have some additional area that we'll be able to show to meet that snow storage requirement as well. I believe that addresses that. You guys have any questions?
Can I speak to one other thing real quick about on that south side where you talked about, you specifically mentioned landscaping. And the modifications that Eric has made has freed up that landscaping along that south side, so it's not within the confines of the basin. So in addition to what Sean's pointed out with this, we can do like the wall of arbs you talked about for additional aesthetic and sound mitigation. And to Mr. Robertson's point, about the glass, I mean, certainly you think about the glass in addition to everything else, and, there's units all over town that are next to train tracks, and, it's urban living, there's road noise, things like that. So we'll take the measures we can. That glass is typically a big deal that's used near airports and everything else, and so it's perhaps a little more difficult than what we are proposing here, which are some very extensive measures to address it. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
John, you mentioned as condition 3 that does your comment about 3 and storage apply to the site plan that's been presented to us?
Yes.
Okay.
So, so I've identified those items. So what I would suggest, it seems like certainly on the snow storage, it can be adjusted. I think there's, it's just more or less a calculation and maybe how some of that's laid out. There are other areas that can work for snow storage, so I'm not really concerned. It's just a matter of identifying it so it meets the requirement of the ordinance.
Okay.
I would suggest that if the planning commission wanted to move forward on this, that these are items that the applicant could address before staff starts the findings of fact. But I think, these are, in my mind, are design items. It doesn't, if you're comfortable with the overall layout of the site, I think these are relatively minor items that could be adjusted with a change in, some changes in the site plan, and then once those are addressed, then we can prepare the findings of fact and present them at your next regular business meeting.
Okay. Well, what's your pleasure, guys?
I'll make the motion to direct staff to hold a public, motion to direct staff to prepare findings of fact for application SUP 2023-08 submitted by 3066 North Garfield Road LLC for a special use permit for commercial district housing development at parcel 05-013-050-00, subject to the following conditions 1 through 3 as indicated in PD 2024-18.
Support.
Motion made, supported to direct staff to prepare findings of fact. Do we want to set a date for that? I didn't see a date in there. Are we going to, any specific?
It would probably be at your next regular meeting, so the April meeting, but
April.
it's also something that they would have to.
They would have to get this stuff to us, so.
Yes.
I'll just leave it open then at this
Yeah.
point. Okay.
And I would anticipate that these are items that they should easily be for us to move forward on the findings to have it for your next
Make
regular
sure.
meeting in April.
You work with them, make sure they have all the conditions met and.
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right. Next item on the agenda is item B, the Culver Meadows Senior Living Center conditional rezoning findings of fact. So in your packet is the staff findings of fact. John, I don't know if you want to run through those, or
Yes.
Steve? you wanna-
John, do those? So, conditional rezoning, you had a public hearing last month, and we've initiated the preparation of the findings of fact, which you have in your packet, and we addressed some of the site development requirements and so forth. There are some conditions that were identified as recommendations to be included, should you make a recommendation to the town board regarding the conditional rezoning. One of the key things is we did have Olson Bisdock Howard. They did review the conditional rezoning agreement and the statement of conditions. I spoke with the attorney today, and also it conveyed some changes that they're suggesting that the applicant consider making adjustments. It doesn't change the project in terms of what's being proposed from a use. It's more of some technical items related just to the verbiage that's in the agreement. But I talked with the applicant before the meeting, and they're okay with those changes. I think there was maybe about 5 or 6 relatively small changes in that agreement. I think it clears the, and I can, if you want to go through, I can go through those, because I think that agreement is in your packet, but, and I can maybe just review those with you, but the applicant seemed fine with those, and will adjust the agreement so that it can be considered then by the township board. The other items, conditions, there's the easement, which has to be adjusted. That can be done. It's just going to be required a recording of a new easement for that location. The requirement of a wetland delineation should the child care center go in is just a condition. That's no action to be taken. Talked with the applicant about the lighting requirements, and those seem to be minor, and they're just going to be able to address those through site plan adjustments. And then the last two, there's the one related to the condition about the proposed blue spruce, black spruce. The applicant is going to adjust those in maples instead of the spruce. So those should be able to be addressed as a site plan item along with those lighting requirements. And then the stormwater review is still required by the township engineer as well. So.
So would you comfortable if we move forward with this, that approve it with the conditions that are recommended by the attorney, or something to that effect? Or what would you suggest?
Yeah, I would,
Is the amended one in our packet, or this is the original one that's in our packet?
this is the original one, and we haven't received an amended one. That would have to come from the applicant.
Okay, all right.
So what I would suggest maybe is rewording that condition number 1, where it says the conditional rezoning agreement and statement of conditions is subject to review by the township attorney. Since that's been completed, I would say something, a revised conditional rezoning agreement and statement of conditions is to be submitted by the applicant. One of the things that we're conscious of is the way that the Zoning Enabling Act is written related to conditional rezonings. So those statements of conditions have to be offered from the applicant.
Right.
It does allow the township to suggest some recommended changes. These, again, don't really have anything to do with, they're more like legal technicalities and everything. So I think those are fine to, for them, like I said, they can make those adjustments based on what we recommended from the township attorney's review.
I mean, we've seen it a few times. The applicant has offered to answer any questions anybody in the board would have. Anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Well, I have no questions because I don't know what the changes were.
I can go through those if you want. Would that be helpful to the?
Yeah, go ahead. I mean,
Sure.
I don't know
that
how we
way,
can vote on them if you don't tell us what they are.
yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
So you have the agreement in your packet. It's the conditional rezoning agreement. There's a letter in there from the Jewetts, and then there's the actual conditional rezoning agreement. So it's got a date stamp of received December 5th, 2023. Kind of looks like this.
Okay, I guess I gotta find it. This is our packet. Yeah, I believe it's, okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'll go with this.
So just a minor item.
Back a ways.
You shouldn't dig me, there we go.
Got it?
Yep.
Just a minor item, there just has to be in the form that the Register of Deeds will record this, and because all documents that are recorded by the Register of Deeds have to be in a certain form. So that just has to be adjusted. Did also talk about the terminology related to childcare facility and AFC home. It needs to be consistent through the whole agreement, and it basically should be the definitions or the terms that we have definitions for in the zoning ordinance, which is adult foster care large group home, which is currently what they have, and that's what they're proposing. So it should be adult foster care large group home, which allows up to 20 residents. And then child care center is the term that we use for commercial operations of this nature.
Okay.
So,
So are each of these going to be considered individual units then? 20 is the maximum, and we got 2 of them,
so there's one existing,
right?
and so that's the other thing, is to put a statement in here as to what is happening is it's creating, so the current facility is a legal non-conforming use. So this conditional rezoning puts it into greater conformity for that, and then it allows a new one to be built, and each of those are allowed to be to 20.
They'll be spelled out as separate units then.
Right.
Yep.
Because they're separate parcels.
Yep, separate parcels, and then that statement says the conditional rezoning is also for the new parcel, essentially the newly created parcel, to accommodate a adult foster care large group home and a child care center. So that was something that maybe just needed to be a little bit clarified, so that statement that I just mentioned would be placed along with paragraph 1 under agreement and statement of conditions at the bottom of page 2. So again, it would be saying that, in essence, the existing facility is a legal, non-conforming use. The conditional rezoning will allow for it to be in greater conformity with the ordinance, and the conditional rezoning will also allow for the creation of a new adult foster care, large group home, and a child care center on the other parcel. So it gets to why we're doing it the way we're doing it. The second section under the agreement and statement of conditions at the bottom of page 2 will just be stated to, the property shall not be used for any use not permitted by this agreement. So essentially, in the conditional rezoning, only the uses that are stated in here are permitted. So that part about the reference to the ordinance and the agricultural district will be removed. Just a minor typo on section 3. It states the property shall revert to the R1 zoning district, and it should say if the property cannot be viably used as a adult foster care, large group home, and child care center. So applicant will be replaced with property.
So John, a question for you. Are these changes going to be made on this now, or if we proceed with the suggested motion, will they be able to come back with the changes done and you guys will just review them, or how?
We will review them before they go to the town board, if you're okay with that.
So basically, if
We can,
agree and make a motion, it'll only carry if they come back with everything the way the township's lawyer wants it.
Correct.
Is that correct? It gets thrown out if the township lawyer, if it's not everything that the township lawyer wants, it's no good, right? Or it don't take place, or it don't
Right.
proceed.
well, I mean, that's what, yes, I mean, to make it, yeah, I would say at that point, we would probably return it back to the planning commission. So, but the applicant indicated that they would be okay with it. There's one other item, and that is paragraph 7, which we've asked if that could be stricken. It anticipates if there's going to be some other change to the classification. At this point, we feel like the zoning ordinance will deal with that should there be any change. It doesn't, the way it's kind of worded kind of creates some confusion and misunderstanding. And when I talked with the attorney, we agreed that, and the applicant agreed to it, that it would just be better to be stricken from the actual
7
agreement.
would be completely removed.
Correct.
So these all seem like legal technicalities, are the, not material to what we're really approving.
Correct.
And I just wanted to say, I did talk to John, as he mentioned there before the meeting and stuff. I'm fine with these changes and everything, and I will have them turned into John by the first of the week. And everything, I say the first of the week, because my day's busy tomorrow and they don't work Friday and stuff. But I'm comfortable with the changes and everything, and I have no problem making them changes and following all the requirements and everything, so.
Thanks, Brad. Any other questions for Brad? Okay. All right. So,
Well, I'll make the motion unless somebody else has something they want to add. So I'll make the motion that the findings of fact for application Z 2023-04 as presented in the Planning Department report number 2024-19 and being made part of this motion be adopted with the following.
No, that's just.
Oh, that's it.
That's just
I'm
it.
getting ahead of myself.
Support.
all right, motion was made and supported to adopt the findings of fact as presented for Z 2023-04 in Department Report 2024-19. Any other further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, now I'll make the other motion that recommended to the town board that the application Z 2023-04 be approved, subject to the following conditions 1 through 7 as indicated in the PD report 2024-18, with the change of number 1 to read a revised agreement needs to be submitted. Is that correct?
I would say a revised conditional rezoning agreement and statement of conditions is to be submitted by the applicant.
And then the other 2 through 7 would remain the same.
You can probably remove 6, because he's going to address that with a different planting in.
Okay,
that-
so
that I
the-
think we can be addressed in the site plan.
So the number 1 is changed, number 2 through 5 remain the same, and 6 is stricken, and 7 is the same.
Correct.
Support.
All right, motion made, supported to recommend to the town board approval of application 2020, Z 2023-04 with the conditions as stated, and then staff will review the revised agreement to make sure it matches what we stated, so. Any further discussion or comments on that? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brad. All right. Wow, our public is gone. So we don't see anything in our new business, right? Anything
No new
else?
business.
Okay. And I see no public, so we'll go past public comment to other business. Review updated pages for the final draft of the master plan. So that was in your packet. Guys wanna- Go ahead, Steve.
Yep, so thank you all for providing feedback at the last study session. So we took a look at, we provided just some selected pages since they didn't affect every single page, with the idea that if everyone's comfortable or if anyone has any other comments in advance of the joint meeting, we will then get a revised, essentially final draft to both the Planning Commission and the town board for that meeting. So this is sort of this is the last meeting before the joint meeting.
Well, I'm glad, because I was going to try to figure out how to get these 3-hole punch pages into this.
Yeah,
version. I
we
didn't
can,
think they were like that, so.
Yeah, you'll get new ones.
All right, good enough.
I know there's been a lot of paper copies of things. So.
All right.
Also, if anyone has their old drafts at any point in this process, thank you, Bob, you brought yours in earlier. So just to keep everyone on the latest copy. So don't have to go through in great detail, but just to kind of go over what was on them. Amended on the first one that you see is that kind of opening paragraph and just kind of background, kind of acknowledging the tribe. I think we found that on the tribe's website as just sort of a little introduction. What's numbered as 10 and 11, we kept the same numbers, just printed out from the document. 10 and 11 cited the specific parts of the census. I remember someone mentioned that. So made those a little clearer. The maps 2 and 3, the water and sewer, just focused on the lines and made them at least thick enough to distinguish between the roads, but kind of removed some of the excess on there.
They look really nice.
Yeah, thank you. We added on what is page 27. This is actually for the, this would be the low-density residential. The heading is on the previous page, which didn't change. But this was addressing more of that area in the northwest. We got some comments on some of those smaller kind of agricultural lots or ones that people want to do agricultural activity. So we just said, recognizing this designation may be in areas transitioning from agricultural uses to residential uses, small-scale agricultural operations in unplatted areas are allowed to continue. So that was to try to address that area. The next several of these, there's not actually a lot of text changes, but since we talk about mixed-use neighborhood and mixed-use center, to actually highlight, since there's a specific area that all these correspond to actually just do a small inset map for each one of those, so that we know what areas we're talking about. So that's
The maps are gorgeous.
most of them, yeah.
Except one
Yes,
on page 40.
yeah.
The Barlow Park red line shows up on the Logan's Landing map, and I just looked at it.
Yeah.
Took me a second, I figured it out, but
Mm-hmm.
if you could just, if I could trouble you to reprint that one map without the Logan's Landing line on it.
Crop that.
Yeah, maybe
But
print it
these
without.
are great, because,
Yeah.
I mean, anybody in our community can look at these maps and immediately understand,
Yeah,
what this boundary is and why it's relevant.
yeah.
Heck, we can understand them better. I know, I get confused
Yeah, us
on-
too.
I can get confused on them sometimes, too, so.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know we'll look at it in a few years and be like, where's that neighborhood again?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's a good catch. You can crop that a little clearer. Sometimes it was to try to fit them in on these pages, but yeah, that would help clarify that one. But otherwise, yeah, it helps kind of with the readability of this. Future land use map, just commented on the couple areas that we talked about last time. It's a little difficult to see on the small one, but the end of day drive, making up the multifamily or high-density residential, that northeast corner at South Airport and Town Line, kind of splitting those areas as we talked about, and then keeping the commercial along 31 up by Rennie School. Talk about Harmon Hammond. There's a few paragraphs that kind of consolidate a little bit more what was discussed about Hartman Hammond.
I just want to mention just
Yeah.
quickly on there, I did keep the references to the two studies because I think they're essential for the basis of why there's more detail in the appendix. It's important to give rationale why it's being recommended here. So it's just to reference that there's actually studies that were performed that substantiate why it's justified to have a crossing there, and it's not just something that we just want to see. So there's actual rationale. So that's, I just want to mention, because I mentioned about maybe removing those, but I had to have something in there to give that.
And the details are in
Yeah.
the appendix with kind of everything that was part of that studies. Also, in reference to Day Drive, adding that to in the future connections, the part about Lowe's to Grand Traverse Mall, to just kind of clarify that is not anticipated to connect since it's not designed for cut-through traffic. For goals and objectives, just wanted to add a sentence that each objective is numbered to allow for reference, but there's no prioritization order implied. And the objectives match those listed in the matrix. A couple small just edits to add Traverse City Light and Power, do a small typo correction, and then the only other objective to actually get some added detail was specifically access management plans. I'm talking about the streets and roads when we talk about access management. Specifically, access management plans are desired for key corridors, including South Airport Road from Cass to Town Line, US 31 from Hartman to Township City Line, or others to be identified in the future. So just kind of highlighting a couple of those, and then to put that also in the matrix, to make sure the matrix always matches the other list. So that's pretty much what we had. The only one that was kind of difficult to do and we didn't do was the non-motorized one, to try to distinguish between proposed and existing. About the only thing I was thinking even just now was there is the existing one in the appendix, even if that map just indicates, please see this map for the existing network. This map shows the full existing and proposed, just to clarify that a little bit. When I was trying to distinguish, it looked too messy, and I was trying to rectify it, and it was not working. So, Yeah, that's pretty much it.
It's a great-looking master plan.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for feedback on it, and I'm excited to get discussion with the board as well, and then hopefully, if it goes according to a timeline, we will be able to kick off the adoption process, starting at that meeting.
That's good.
So I noticed a little something I didn't see before.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
That's right,
On that-
now is the time, literally, to do this, so.
On that mixed-use neighborhood, pink, up at the corner of Zimmerman and North Long Lake, we have that whole thing, which I'm concerned about everything north of North Long Lake Road, south of it. The Zimmerman Road side is being current right now, going up the hill, so it'd be in the, I don't know why we want that included, and nobody asked for it, and, so I could see what are we calling that new development over there?
Meadow Valley?
Meadow Valley's fine to be in there.
Yeah.
I think them other two parcels that are right at the intersection on both sides of the road, that would be a nightmare if something happened there more than what's there now.
Right.
Okay.
So unless somebody else had a bigger reason for that, I think we ought to strike them
Okay.
both
Keep
sides.
that single family up.
So you're
Keep
basically
them-
the.
Well, because I don't think that it would,
Yeah.
it would be hard for traffic.
And there's you've got Brookside Commons and
Yeah.
Meadow Valley kind of already soaking up a lot right at that intersection. Okay,
Right.
yeah.
So basically the southeast corner and the southwest corner between Zimmerman and Meadow Valley. Those would be, they would go back, I think they're low-density residential.
I think they're currently, I think it's over there.
Yeah.
I think that's what they are. so.
Well, that's what I would think, because it would,
Okay.
either one of them two
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
no problem.
would be, if there were ever any kind of commercial, I know the verbiage says it's either commercial or high density, but I don't see any advantage to have, nobody asked to have them upgraded.
Right.
Yeah. And knowing that the way that,
That's quite a hill there. and-
yeah, that hill comes
Yeah.
down, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, the only time that might possibly be changed is that if Zimmerman Road ever gets connected through and that other road is abandoned, then there might be some opportunity there for some different development, because they won't be affecting on traffic as much possibly.
Well, I doubt that, so the North Long Lake Road going to the to the right or to the,
Yeah.
I doubt that would ever get abandoned.
It was talk about it at one point,
There's too many houses on it. so-
Well, to Barnes maybe, but then from Barnes on, they talked about, there've been a lot of things discussed that never happened there, but I agree with you that I don't think we need to expand that area.
Yeah, okay.
No.
Yeah, the
That's
grades
fine.
are pretty severe
Yeah.
Yeah.
going south on Zimmerman anyways.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
Yeah.
straight down to the hill. It's fun in the winter to come down the intersection. A lot of people go right through that
I'm
intersection.
real careful there.
I know. I was going to church one morning on a Sunday, and the person was going to try to be quick and coming from the apartment building, and they were going to beat me through the lights, so they stepped on the gas, and next thing they knew, they were pointed straight west, and they were in the eastbound lane, pointed straight west, and I just walked and waved to them when I drove past them. They were going the wrong direction, so bad spot to play around. Any other questions or observations on the maps? Looks good. All right.
Thank you.
Well, with that, we'll jump right into the topics for the joint board. Now, you're going to give us new copies.
Yes.
Did you need anything back from us? I brought my draft copy back last meeting.
If
Yeah.
you want to bring anything back, so we recycle it, binders or papers or whatever,
Yeah.
we'll take them.
Okay.
Whatever's convenient. But yeah, we'll issue new bound plans for both the Planning Commission and the Township Board, which, as they haven't seen it yet in this form, and we'll provide those for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked at the last meeting about brainstorming some topics to talk about. So does anybody jump in with something they'd like to talk about at the meeting?
I think at the last meeting, John said they were gonna do kind of an introduction.
Yeah, on the plan itself, yep, we got that covered. We'll do, it'll probably be just a low-key, just review of the plan. One of the things we want to make sure is that the Township Board, recognizes that the way this master plan is structured is it ties back to the Township Board's strategic plan. So a lot of the headings here are really emanate from those key strategic goals. So that's kind of a nice tie-in to that. It makes it kind of unified. But yeah, we'll kind of go through where we've been, the kind of rationale behind the whole layout of the document and all of that.
Well, I think we need to give them, excuse me, the general picture, but we don't want to bury them in all the detail.
No,
Yeah.
no, absolutely not. I don't, we're not going to go through the document. Probably the big thing, we'll kind of maybe lay out how it's structured, and, we have a plan, and then we have this massive appendix, which is only a reference document. It's really the plan that's just going to be the more usable piece. But I think we'll review the future land use map, because there are some changes. The areas that we've identified for new single-family residential and the mixed-use areas, which will, I think, provide the township with a lot more flexibility in these areas. Particularly, like we were just talking about recently, is we're not seeing a lot of new retail commercial. We're seeing other types of commercial businesses, but not retail. So these areas which we are, it's just like what we're seeing at Cherryland, the redevelopment of that is focused on entertainment uses and potentially other uses, which is good for that property. But, we're not, or if we are seeing any retail, it tends to be more discount retailers and so forth. But understanding that these areas are still really viable, still very visible, still valued, we want to make sure that we can utilize those areas in ways for new uses to keep them vibrant. And that's where I think the mixed use is really intended to give us some flexibility. And we have those development principles that are in there. So I think we'll cover the map and talk about those areas in terms of what's different. I don't think those are massive differences to what's there now. It's just some of these key areas. So, and other than that, I don't think we want to get, I think the rest of that's just kind of verbiage type stuff that they can kind of read through all the different goals and objectives. But I will say this too, Steve and I have already been talking about how we're going to take the master plan and make changes to the zoning ordinance itself. And looking at districts, we're going to create some new districts, some mixed-use districts, maybe fine-tune some of the other ones. So and that will really essentially be the key focus of the implementation of the master plan. And those are things that we can start working on later this year by the Planning Commission.
Well, I had two things came to mind. Well, probably I think it was the last time we met with the town board, or if it wasn't the last time, it was the time before. The main discussion was about housing and different, and so if nothing else, we could, you guys could put, recap all the things we've done to try to incentivize, housing, single-family housing, affordable housing, however you want to look at it. But that was definitely a hot button last time we met with the board, and we've definitely made some moves, and that could tie in with the master plan. That's how we've opened up more areas for single-family housing. We've reduced the square footage in certain districts. All those things we've done, maybe recap those in a document, just to, hey, look, we're making some movement there. This one's more of a, I keep bringing this up kind of like a bad penny, but maybe we can, surface with the board the idea of that mall access road from Lowe's through to the mall, and is there anything at the board level that they could help us to make that happen? I don't know, I don't know what those might be, but is there anything that the board could do or be willing to do? I don't know what happens with the investment monies and things, but maybe it's not so far-fetched that the township might try to acquire some of that property and help facilitate that going through. You know, I just think that's a key connection piece that would really enhance that whole corridor. I know I keep bringing it up, but I think it's a big idea, so I'd maybe discuss that with the board.
Yeah.
I know it's in our master plan. It's mentioned specifically, it has its own little section in there, so, so I don't know quite how we bring that up, but.
It could be in the context of, we talk about future connections in the master plan, we talk about access management, and doing access management plans. Like, some details like that could be in an access management plan. We've seen, I found one in Petoskey where it was like fully engineered, and it includes some of the like service roads or connector roads, and it's like, this is how we're gonna engineer and how it's gonna be. And it was right where like 31 and 131 come together.
Somebody needs to take a lead
But yeah,
role in trying to get all these
What's the
people.
catalyst to get it all moving?
I like, I don't know how much, we can take a look at that property that the mall owns. I think it's probably worth much. I don't know, because a lot of it's wetlands, but we were trying to talk with some developers, because I feel from the standpoint, once you create access to land, it obviously creates value and opportunity. And maybe if that parcel was purchased from the mall, that would allow for us to complete that connection to Lowe's and then turn around and sell that for development.
Well,
And then that gets then resources then that could be used maybe for the extension all the way down to the mall.
Or engineering or something, but
Yeah.
even if the purchase of that piece of it, if it does, if they are motivated to sell it, want to sell it, a condition of the sale might be an access to their roadway. Hey, we'll buy this piece, but the condition is we can access your circle driveway as part of that. Maybe. I just think somebody needs to take a leadership role, or try to get all parties together and get it moving. It'll sit there forever if somebody doesn't kick it down the road or get it moving. So
I hosted, just so I don't want to get too much in this, but it is interesting, because I did host some meetings with some of those property owners, and I do think it's possible, but you're right, I think there's, we almost kind of got to figure a game plan to do that. But I think it is possible. Going to the north of Day Drive is not a bad option, and that'll work fine. It's getting to the south, it's a little tricky, but there's got to be a way through that. I know we had the township engineer do a schematic, it looks like it's possible. Our problem is we got our tower right there, but I think there's a way we can wrap that road around it, and
well, a road, a road that's not perfectly straight is not a bad thing. They make a lot of money calling that, traffic calming. But so the fact that they have to wind through a parking lot or around something is not a bad thing. You think about places you've been and in all these unique access roads. You get off an expressway and there's all kinds of small roads that get you to a restaurant or a hotel or whatever. So I just think there's so much activity there, and anything we can do to take traffic off US 31 South is a good thing, and I think it could be a good thing for the mall too. If you created more traffic through that mall, I think it might help them. It can't hurt them any, I don't think. So, okay, that's the only couple things I had. Anybody have anything else they want to put on the list? I'm sure you guys have things, and the board may bring things. I'm not sure, but.
I don't think we had anything. Did we have anything?
I don't think we had anything additionally. I think master plan was going to take up like a
Yeah,
chunk
I'm
of the
sure
time.
that is,
Yeah, we were just trying to be brief.
Did anyone want I had a note that someone mentioned last time, like state legislative update. I don't know if there's anything specific, like on any of the preemption things, like the energy, or I also don't know how much there would be to say at this point. I don't know if there's been a lot of news.
Maybe the township could update a little bit at the meeting. Chuck was talking about the short-term rental deal coming up again, and he
It's
had-
going to be pushed at
he
the
had-
legislature at some point again? Okay.
So there are other legislative things, the energy, solar. Can townships have anything to say about that, or are people just going to go and get their licenses from the state and bypass us? It's good for us to know those things.
Right.
Was mining another one? Was it
Yeah.
Mining and the short-term rentals are
Some of those are
both.
like hot and cold, they'll come back around, they don't ever go away.
But he was talking about ways to kind of preempt the short-term rental deal
Yeah.
and have some ordinances written. But maybe he could expand on that a little bit
Yeah.
to us.
Right.
Okay.
Solar's another one, but I don't think we had we don't have a lot of places in Garfield that probably are,
Your mom's property.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
so, things we
Pools,
can,
any of those.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the last we had heard on the solar was, I think it takes effect later this year, but the renewable energy siting takes effect later in the year. The thing I remember was like part of the legislation talks about like if there's a compatible renewable energy ordinance in the locality, there's some amount of like local review that could take place. To which my first question is, what's a compatible renewable energy ordinance, and does ours meet that standard? Have the standards been written for that yet? Like if they haven't even been, the rulemaking part, if that's not been decided yet, like we may not even know at this point, so. But an update just to see where is this currently at and where is it going, I think would be good.
Yeah.
Over the weekend, I was at a place, they had a petition going around, and they said it was for that solar, or the energy one, they're trying to get a petition to get it on the fall ballot, to repeal it. Have you guys heard anything about that?
I think MTA had an update on that.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
circling.
Yeah, I think it's not done yet in terms of there's efforts to kind of counter it and address it.
And that was just the energy one they were talking
Yeah,
about.
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't think it's over yet.
Just get rid of those guys who put those things in.
Well, they said on that particular one, it was somebody from Farmington Hills or something like that that never was out in the country,
Yeah,
so
they
they
don't
like
care.
the idea of all that
Oh, they
solar.
get, GTE's got a lot of money.
well, I guess let's say if we got 2 weeks, if you think of something pops into your head in the next few days, give John a call, get it on the list. He can provide us with a list of topics, but 2 weeks from tonight, and remember, it's 6 o'clock, so you hear a little earlier next time, so.
I'll be out of town for that meeting.
You will miss that one? Okay, John will as well, so the rest of everybody else is going to be here for that?
Good things only.
Okay. John's gone for both March meetings, so, all right.
Okay.
Well, if that's all we have under topics, items for our next agenda, we have,
Is everything we just talked about.
yeah, review the final draft of the master plan, and, well, that's what we just did, yeah, duh, yeah. We've been discussing for 10, 20 minutes. All right,
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
all right, we are adjourned.